I'm the Vice President of Marketing here at eCoast Sales, and we welcome you to today's webinar. Today's webinar is on demystifying channel partner marketing programs. And we're excited to talk to you about this topic today. We've been doing a lot of work here at eCoast with channel partner marketing programs. And I wanted to share some of the experiences that we've been seeing in the marketplace over the past year or so. A couple of housekeeping things I just wanted to go through with you. Number one is we are going to be taking questions throughout the session today, so feel free to enter any information in the questions in the questions box on your panel for the GoToWebinar area, and I'll be watching for those as they come along, and I'll try to get those answered for you as we go. Secondly, we are recording this webinar, so we will be sharing the URL and the recordings with everyone who registered, both attendees or not. So and we'll also be posting it on the eCoast blog after the fact, so you'll be able to share this out with folks if you found it valuable. We'd love for you to do that. Today I'd like to welcome and thank you our sponsor for the ISA Marketing and Sales Summit. I want to welcome all our ISA folks on the line here. I saw a number of you, and it's always a pleasure to see your names. I haven't seen you since September. The ISA Marketing and Sales Summit is part of the ISA organization. It's an industrial automation community for those of you who are not aware. And the Marketing and Sales Summit is going on its 8th year. So this year it's actually going to be a virtual summit, and then there's going to be an in-person summit on the 10th year. So stay tuned for details on that. But the information on the summit is at that URL, marketingsalessummit.com. And there's some upcoming webinars that you might want to also take note of for the folks from the ISA community. We got a couple, one from John DePietro, who's a well-known ISAer. He's going to be talking about blogging for business, and then Walt Boy's also well-known as well. He's going to be talking about PR 101 in the upcoming months, so stay tuned for that. Next slide, Carol. So I'm really happy to introduce our presenters today. One, I have Carol Gassis. She's the Director of Strategic Marketing and Enablement at eCoast, and she has a long history here at eCoast and with channel marketing programs. She was involved in one of the very early channel marketing programs with one of our clients here, and she has a wealth of knowledge and expertise. So I look forward to hearing more about hearing her what she has to say about how you guys can think about putting together the components of your channel marketing program. And I'm also happy to introduce Shawn Lisbon. TIE Kinetix is also the co-presenter of this event today. I met Shawn a couple years ago when I first joined eCoast, and he is an expert in content management and content syndication. And he's going to talk about some of the challenges around content because obviously content is one of those things that everyone has challenges with if you're in the marketing side of the world, and it's especially challenging in partner marketing programs. So he's going to talk a little bit about that in his session. So just to go through the agenda today, we're going to first talk about channel marketing and why it's different from everything else. We're going to introduce the concept of concierge services and talk about why they help, and how they can make a difference in a channel marketing program. We're going to talk about where to begin. We're going to talk about some tactics that drive results. We're going to talk about content marketing, as I mentioned a few minutes ago. And then one of the things we really want to make sure we communicate with you today is, in addition to sort of the fundamental things that you need to be thinking about to build one of these programs, is that you really need to avoid the build it and they will come mentality, because I think that from our experiences we've seen, there's a lot of, some folks want to take very much of a self-service approach versus more of a partnership approach. And there are different ways to go about it. We're going to talk a little bit about that and some of the pitfalls that will happen if you do take more of a pure self-service approach for channel marketing, because sometimes what happens are the partners don't always come to the program. So I'm going to hand it over to Carol.
Great. Thank you, Julian. That was a wonderful introduction. I want to thank everybody for attending today. And just to set the stage here, we're all looking at this from a very high level. So first of all, in terms of demystifying the channel marketing programs, we're all here because ultimately, what are we solving for? We want to grow revenue. We want to improve marketing capabilities in the channel. We want to move partners from tactical to strategic approach. And of course, all while using a scalable channel marketing program. So before we get started, let's do a quick polling question. And Julian, I think you have this ready. Really to understand where everybody is in terms of their desire and their idea around a channel marketing program.
So everyone could take a moment and make an entry. That would be great.
Can everybody see it? I don't see anything, so.
I will be able to share the results in just a minute. I'll have to close the poll, so if everyone could just keep voting.
Okay.
Got 50% voted, almost. I'll get to 75 and I'll close it.
Okay, so let's start here first of all, before we look at those results. Who is the audience in the channel? Well, the channel is a mix. It's varied. You all have your unique channel models and needs, and we understand and recognize this. Most organizations or companies have challenges specific to the partner community. So much of what we discussed today, it can be applied to your company regardless of the solutions or products offered. So when we think of the channel, it's a combination of OEMs, directs, infrastructure as a service partners, retailer partners, we have systems integrators, ISVs, distributors, solution providers, VARs, the list goes on. So for you, this could mean a select partner group, say an ISV or a VAR, or it could mean the entire channel. You'll be viewing the materials today and the dialogue we have through your own filtering needs. Julian,
Carol, you want to look at the results of that poll?
Yeah, I don't see them, so you're going to have to read it.
I'm going to share it right now. Can you see the results, Carol?
Yeah, I don't see anything. Hoping the audience
can
see.
Okay. Right now we have 20% at concept stage, 40% modifying a program, no one in the global, and 40% gathering information.
Interesting. Good
mix. Okay, great. Thank you, everybody.
So the channel marketing problem is different for various reasons. And those reasons range from few internal resources, limited marketing expertise. We have some partners, they're AR, PR, they're operations and sales. The approaches to marketing tend to be, sometimes they're tactical versus strategic. And potentially those channel partners, they don't even follow through on marketing campaigns you create. So the segment of your partners may dictate later what you decide to create and offer for marketing tactics and packages in terms of campaigns. So a quick story around, partners and a partner program. Partners, a number of years ago, we have this strong supplier program going. We have a very strong channel. And we said, we're going to offer the partners marketing services. Everybody was in agreement. One of the packages was a Google AdWords package. And many partners understood what Google AdWords was and how it worked, and others did not. So the partners that didn't understand, when they received their hand raiser leads, and of course they weren't BANT qualified leads, those partners were pretty frustrated because they were still expecting BANT qualified leads from eCoast. On the flip side, the partners that understood, had that marketing knowledge, received those Google AdWords leads, they embraced the program. So just a little nugget of information of the different viewpoints your partners are looking at your program through. So in terms of scalability, if you do provide marketing campaigns, can those partners execute? And how ready are these partners to work the leads you provide? Remember, leads aren't POs in hand, and some of the partners out there still think of leads as POs in hand. Do they have the CRM solution? Do they have the software tools, staff in place to leverage what you've created in terms of marketing programs? We see this every day. There's marketing programs everywhere, but yet the partners don't have the staff to necessarily take advantage of those programs. And of course, lastly, multiple stakeholders. You'll see this if you sit in a global role. We have the PAMs, the CAMs, the partner success managers. That was a new one I heard recently. Partner marketing managers. And of course, we have the partner and his team himself. So now, what is the reality about how we're supporting the partner as suppliers? You've heard the challenges. Well, you're probably on the webcast today because you're either modifying an existing program or creating a new one. Hence why we did that poll. Or even maybe you're scaling your program globally. So you may not be holding that partner accountable to some degree. you know, the partners who want to spend their MDF in a familiar way, and you go ahead and approve it, maybe for T-shirts and swag or promotional items, events or equipment. You know, it's the path of what I call least resistance. So if you have an existing partner marketing program, the partners may not even be incented to participate. I've seen that as well. Or they don't quite understand why they're getting the funding or how it's going to grow their business. They may be getting money for something they don't even know they sell. And if you have a marketing portal, the partners rarely get excited about using a portal. It can tend to feel canned. They may be already using multiple partner portals. And we see this because we're at the vendor level. We can see it, the battles those partners fight in terms of accessing multiple portals. So you, in the end, you might not be saving any time, the partner any time or need for additional resources. The reality is there's competition for mindshare, even in terms of marketing programs that suppliers create. So let's start with scalability. We know we have partners that have limited time and resources or skills for marketing. You create marketing campaigns for partners. Now what? How are you going to get those campaigns implemented and the partners to use them to drive revenue? What we've learned through the years working in the channel is that it is important to understand the needs of both you, the supplier, as well as the partner community. And the whole idea around whether you provide concierge service yourself through your team and staff or hire a vendor, the bottom line is going to be somebody has to do it. So think of concierge as the consultative tool to scale your program. Concierge is the team that is literally providing that hands-on strategic marketing expertise, either by identifying strengths and weaknesses at the beginning of the program and understanding the partner's sales and marketing capacity, gaining best practices from marketing experts to close the knowledge gaps, and working one-on-one with the partners, and getting them to use the marketing campaigns and assets you've created. The team also aids in developing a strategy versus that short-term one-off campaign for your partner. And lastly, senior advisor who monitors the plan execution, progress, and reporting. All very important concepts of any partner marketing program. So the takeaway for scalability, a concierge program can help you bridge that gap between the current scenario, that current state, and the anticipated outcomes you want to achieve. It's all about moving beyond that self-serve and includes elements of onboarding, driving increased participation, reporting of the metrics by tactic, reporting of the KPIs by contribution to the pipeline. So quick example of how concierge works, either from your team or from a vendor. We were on a call recently, and the supplier said, we're going to roll out Neolane to the partner community, a certain group of partners. And they sent an email and said, partners, sign up, and everybody knows this is marketing automation platform. This is going to help the partners know where to go to access the email campaigns, upload their logo, co-brand. It's going to be great. Well, the fact was we learned, we were on the call simply to get training ourselves so that we could assist partners. We learned that none of the partners to date had even signed up. So what does that tell you? We don't want to hear it, but it tells us those partners either don't have the time, don't see the value, or just literally aren't interested in the tool. And we all spend a lot of money on these tools. So hence, concierge, they're helping partners use tools, get the use out of all that content you've created. So again, you'll hear me say, and you heard Julianne say, build it and they'll come. Doesn't necessarily work without some level of concierge. So it's all about using your assets, driving demand generation programs you create, navigating the systems you have in place, and I like to add mapping the deal registration to the marketing initiatives. I've been on a number of calls with suppliers, and they're not quite sure when they roll out the program how they're going to tie it back to the deal registrations. And of course, that's important when we all go to ask for funding. So where to begin? We have identified skills gaps. at the partner level. We've assembled a team, including a concierge, to scale. So what next? Well, you want to begin with understanding your partners, interviewing them, tiering them, and determining the platforms, the software platforms needed or required to run the program. So I've broken this into 3 parts. First is the survey. You're identifying the program objectives and skills gaps at the partner level, because that's your opportunity to drive demand. Is it a cross-sell, upsell opportunity based on the campaigns you're offering? You want to understand the stakeholders at your organization. You don't want to roll this out and have stakeholders at your own organization questioning why you have this program. People who, whether it's the partner marketing managers or the CAMs, or you got to understand what's happening at your own organization as well as at the partner organization. And then, of course, if you're thinking in the second or third phase, you're going to roll it out globally, you definitely want to start the conversation early. Are your partners using deal registration? Well, again, that's tied to, is it tied to their marketing funds? How are you going to tie the program together? How will this process be easily and automatically linked to the program? Consider adoption objectives you want to achieve. You may not know when you first start framing this out, but you've got to have some sort of level of adoption metrics. And I've heard anything from 10% initially, 20%, and I was on a call the other day, and they said, I want 100% adoption, which is a very aggressive goal, but they have a lot of moving pieces in place. So consider incentives and understand your partner readiness, and it's so important. Here's a story about a partner who called who is presently part of a supplier program. The sales rep calls me, and I happen to answer an inbound line, and he said, Carol, I'm part of the program with this supplier, and it's great, and I'm getting leads, and I appreciate that, but I'm the sales rep, and I have to grow the business, and I don't have funds myself. What can I do to help myself? What can I do? And he said, he's that next generation sales rep. He grew up with the web. He gets it. And the first thing I said was, what's your online presence? Because when we're cold calling through our call center to represent you, the partner, the first thing the prospect does is go to a website. And they say, well, is whoever's on the phone, I like what they're saying, but are they credible? And of course, the sales guy had to admit, I talked to the owner of the company, our website's horrible, Carol, and he won't spend any money. He said, we're closing deals now. And I said, that's fine, but if you're cold calling, that's one of the first things they do for credibility. And they said, what about content? And I went out to the website and I said, what about the supplier's logo? I don't even see that brand well represented. So you, the supplier, there's people who want to sell your products, but sometimes at the partner level, there's something holding them back. So again, this is part of determining that partner readiness. Anyway, it might be a tactic later that you consider offering. Maybe it's a website audit. Maybe it's SEO or content syndication, what we're going to hear a little bit about later. Okay, secondly, tiers. 80-20 rule applies. I don't have to say much more than this. Just know that maybe your top 20%, they get a different flavor of your program. They get a more customizable approach, right? They might have marketing people on staff, and I know, having worked in the channel for years, they want to customize. They don't want the level of turnkey prescriptive plays that, I borrow that term from Serious Decisions, that it's just plug and play. They want more customization. And, always look for that increased opportunity to drive revenue through that lower 80% tier of your partners. And thirdly, the tools. What software platforms are you going to need to automate processes? What do you have now? What are your partners using? And here's a favorite tweet I've seen from Richard Branson. I see other people posting it. Anyone can make it complicated. How do I make it simple? And I can't stress it enough, because we see multiple supplier portals, and they're all varied, but the idea behind them all is to keep it simple. These partners don't necessarily have time or staff to execute, and just because we dream it up doesn't make it easy for them. Make it, here's my best analogy, make it like shopping on eBay, Amazon, Zappos. Make it easy. In the end, these questions and these 3 main points are to say, whatever you ask, you're literally finding the answers so you can frame the program. Help you choose what tactics you want to offer in the program and allow you to provide a scalable model anchored by your marketing team and a level of concierge experience, and of course the ability to report metrics and KPIs. So I'll do a quick conversation around funding the program. We all have to talk about the money here. We have partners. We've surveyed them. We understand gaps and opportunities. We have support in place to scale. We've considered the tools we're going to use to bring all the data and assets together. And now we need to discuss how we're going to fund and financially fuel the program. These programs can use anything from accrued MDF to marketing subsidies or a combination. We've seen it done in many different ways. You can partially fund, you can fully fund programs. The goal is going to be to drive the revenue, and it's either changing the conversation now and rewarding the behavior. It's Pavlov and the dog. Okay, so remember, avoid it and the build it and they will come approach. And adding a menu of prescriptive marketing plays, it doesn't necessarily or instantly drive behavior or revenue, regardless of how simple it is. I've seen this done time and time again. So think about how you want to incent the behavior. So good segue, and I'm going to turn it over to Julianne to talk a little bit about about the tactics that drive revenue.
Thanks, Carol, and thanks for that overview. That was interesting. And so the other thing I'd like to add on the funding part of the program is, as Carol was talking about partially funding versus fully funding, and MDF, which for those who might not know what that means, that's marketing development funds or funds that you're providing to your partners to actually spend money on behalf of your particular supplier products and services. Some of the things we've seen it work both ways. We've seen it where, 100% funded programs can work really well and help incent participation. And that means that, you're offering some of the tactics I'm going to talk about in a minute. Those are things that you offer them and you fully pay for. But you have to kind of think ahead about, what what your average deal size is and how much benefit they get for selling so much revenue and all those kinds of things. Or is it just a set amount that you want to allocate to partners that have no ties to revenue? So it really depends on how you want to work it. And the other piece is if you partially fund it, is that better or worse? And we've seen it work in both cases. Sometimes if you have a partner community where they like to have a little more skin in the game, or you want them to have more skin in the game, you offer a partial funding where you offer 50% of the total cost of a campaign to fund. Or as we said a minute ago, it can be 100%. And like I said, we've seen it work both ways. It just really depends on what the appetite of your organization is and to what extent you can offer funding through your partner channel. So in terms of tactics that drive results, just want to talk a little bit about the things that we're seeing here. So when we're working with partners, the partner community, typically the very first thing that comes up that is not an area of expertise or in control is data. And so, when you're thinking about marketing campaigns, you're thinking about who your audience is, and do people have a well-developed mailing email list, and has it been nurtured, or is it something that's not managed well? And so, oftentimes, that can be a stumbling block for partners. And so what we want to make sure is that if you're not confident that your partners don't have good data lined up, that you make sure that you're setting up a program that offers data to buy net new lists, to find new contacts, expand into new markets. Or some of the other strategies could be, if a partner represents more than one supplier, maybe the goal is to expand your supplier's footprint within that particular partner's base. So you have to think about the different types of data that you're going to want to ask your partners to create or support for these particular campaigns. So you need to put together some level of a data offering, whether it's they can purchase a list or clean a current list or something like that, or build a completely new list based on target accounts and things like that. So it really just depends on what the goals are for your particular program. The other piece we see working really well for when you're talking about prescriptive packages that will help drive demand through the partner channel, we're seeing a lot of uptick in inbound and outbound marketing, and that shouldn't be a really big surprise. I mean, inbound marketing is where it's at today. Everyone's trying to figure out better ways to do that, but oftentimes at the partner level, it's a very complicated task. Number one, they don't have the time to blog. They don't have the time to set those kinds of things up, nor do they handle, the whole social piece, which is the third aspect. So either they don't know how to do it, or if they do it, they don't have the time to do it. So, so you need to think about when you're putting packages together, what are the kinds of things you're going to want your partners to have access to? Inbound and outbound marketing. The outbound marketing really refers to teleprospecting for appointment setting, or inbound lead qualification for partners. Say one of your Tier 1 partners has a really strong inbound program but needs help qualifying leads. There are those kinds of packages that you can put together. Now, you have to keep in mind as well, as you're putting these packages together, how that all fits in from how you're planning on funding it. You need to make sure the packages are affordable and all fit within the confines of the program that you're designing. Because you don't want to put all these great, packages together but have them cost too much money to actually be able to deliver to the partner. So working with your vendor to figure out how to make that balance is an important part. But, in terms of the top 3 areas that we see are highly successful and help fuel the demand for partners fairly quickly and out of the gate, because everyone wants results yesterday. They don't want to wait too long, is these 3 particular elements with the data, a mix of inbound and outbound marketing, and then really hitting on the social. Next slide. And finally, when you're thinking about all these programs, and it's funny because one of the first channel programs that for some of the folks from ISA know that I joined eCoast here a little while ago, and when I first got here we started a channel program with a supplier, but there were not many assets to support the campaigns that were planned. So I think content marketing is one of those things that none of us marketers can get away from. This is something that we're always going to have to be struggling with and thinking about. And certainly for an inbound marketing program, content is key. It's even important for the outbound pieces when you have someone on the phone representing your partner. They need to be able to point them back to something or provide some level of value add back to the person they're speaking with. So I think that one of the things that is really that everyone has to figure out is content marketing, and that's why we also invited TIE Kinetix in on this webinar today, because they have seen a fair share of how companies struggle with how to manage content at a global or a company level, and then finding good ways and easier ways, as Carol said, keep things simple to distribute and provide that content to the partner channel. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Shawn Lisbon from TIE Kinetix.
Thanks very much, Julianne. That's a great segue. And I think you brought up a lot of really good points, Carol, as well. And we see quite a bit, in the channel space as well. We've been doing sort of what we do in the space for over 14 years as well. And there's quite a bit of lost opportunities when it comes to sort of the demand generation aspect of through partner marketing, and really how do you get content out? How do you do content marketing with your partners, or even better for your partners? Simply because you run into those issues where, if you look at something like on this slide, you see this really low program adoption, and that's universal, and it goes back to a lot of the concierge service that Carol mentioned. But you can have the best intentions, you can have great content, you can have good content marketing, people in-house at the vendor level, but if the partner doesn't have those same skills or that same bandwidth or that same time, you see these really low conversion rates. You find that programs aren't being used, the programs that are being used aren't being followed through on properly. There's low revenue. One of the things we'll see is the content piece is really key for them driving, especially inbound marketing and demand gen through that process. And most of the partners that are much smaller, long-tail partners, medium-sized to small-sized VARs, a lot of them, the best you can hope for is a vendor logo on the website and then a link back to the vendor's homepage. But that's a really poor end-user experience. The end users are going online to orient online, and they're using that heavily. And if they can't find what they're looking for on that particular partner's website, and they have to link back to another website to find it and start from scratch, you have huge attrition there. You also find that they could find another partner in the partner locator when they get there, and that lead is gone away and gone back to another partner. And it could be that when they find the partner locator and they go to another partner, they very easily could land on a home page where that particular partner is actually giving a lot more digital shelf space to one of your competitors than to you. So there's a lot of missed opportunities really when it comes to making sure that the content that you want as a vendor, your partners to use, is actually being used and it's available in a way that end users can find it. So it's a really big problem. So what's interesting is, and it's very helpful to understand when you start looking at third-party statistics and kind of getting a good idea about really why content matters. These are some statistics that really ring really true when it comes to this content marketing idea. 2/3 of a buyer's journey is done before they ever contact sales. They're basically making their minds up more than 50% of the way before they ever reach out to one of your partners. And specifically in the B2B space, they're really not engaging suppliers unless they've already done online research. And if they're orienting online for your products and they're doing it on a partner's website and that partner is not participating in your marketing programs and is not leveraging your content to do good content marketing, there's just a real big missed opportunity there, and they're going to purchase from a different vendor and different supplier. So once you understand that there is a desire, a demand, and a need to really try to help with content marketing and really help make sure that the partners are representing your products in a correct way on their website, it's also important to think about what kind of content, what is the right content. And a quick anecdote here, running programs like we run where we do things with things like syndication, pushing content out to partners, we've seen some examples where certain vendors will start with the content that is most readily available, which is a very good tactic because they have content that they've already created for their own websites that should be universally needed by the partners as well. However, one of their particular strong suits on their corporate website was about a particular product line. And in that particular product line, they had heavy amounts of assets, white papers, case studies, videos, that real good content that end users were interested in when they got to the corporate homepage. So in the content that they were sharing with the partners, it reflected that. So it had quite a bit of assets for a particular product line, but it was very light on other product lines. And what they found was the content that they actually shared, when it went off their website and they started putting it onto their partner's website, the second most visited product line was one of the least represented with content. And that was because there's actually can be different eyeballs, if you will, on the partner's website looking for different information about that same vendor when they go to a partner's website versus when they go to the corporate website. So it's very interesting to know that your brand can be viewed very differently. You can have different people at the same potential company viewing your content in different eyes when they go to different places. So your website might represent it one way, but they might be looking for something very different. So if they're on a partner's website, they might be looking, it might be an actual procurement person looking to buy more of the consumables of your particular product. So white papers or case studies about those particular product lines might be more relevant, whereas on the corporate website, it could be more about the high level, the solution, the industry, trying to get maybe it's a higher level person in the operations that's really kind of reviewing you as a vendor and less concerned about the individual product. So there's definitely different goals, there's different audiences, and really they could be in a different buying process at that particular stage, high level versus actually looking for specific information. So it's not good enough just to say, well, I have content and that's what my partners get. You have to really take it a step further and kind of go where you think the eyeballs will be. So one of the things is once you understand that content is king, content is an issue, and it is an issue for your partners to actually get content, you start looking at, well, one of the problems is it's not just good enough to make the content available for the partners to use, because then the partners have to go to, say, a partner portal or wherever you've created the content and they have to start taking content in an ad hoc fashion and decorating it on their website. What you find when you do that model is that content can be out of date. They've taken the time once, they were engaged maybe for 10 or 15 minutes, and they maybe took a white paper and put it on their website, and now their time has changed. They have less bandwidth. They're not going back and forth and constantly keeping that content updated. They're not keeping on top of all the campaigns. So if you can automate the delivery of content or campaigns, that's where you really get into effectiveness. And it's not good enough to look at marketing automation tools that simply simplify the work for you, the channel marketer. You need to look at tools and ways that you can automate processes not only for yourself, but also for the partner, because the partner has the same issue that you have with lack of resources, lack of expertise, and they have it even more so. In some cases, they might not even have marketing departments. There could be one particular salesperson that tends to do a little bit more than others. So you really want to try to connect to your partners in a way that you can actually help deliver content to them so they can leverage it. You also want to be able to close that loop. So you want to really strive for that closed loop channel marketing solution. You want to be able to, how do I make sure that if I have good content and I share it with the partners and I let the partners use it to drive demand, that the leads that are captured with that content go directly back to that partner. And those leads are captured off their website, not my website, right? So really trying to close that loop and understanding that that partner himself, he might not want all of your solutions. He might be authorized to sell a few of those, and your product lines are a piece of his bigger overall solution and his overall brand that he's presenting. So understanding what type of content they're looking for, where they want it to be, what kind of information they'd like it to cover, where they want the branding heavy, where they want the branding light, where they want co-branding. If you have co-branding, if you can make it so as much of that co-branding process is automated, so it's not just here's something to go co-brand. If you can take that process and say, here's something that we've already co-branded for you by using technology tools that can do automatic co-branding. And then really looking at that, you have the 80-20 rule, as Carol mentioned, and you're definitely going to have some larger partners, but you're going to have different people in different spots in the funnel, different partners looking for different types of hand-holding, and really respecting that they are individual companies and you are a piece of their puzzle, and having something that has a very small footprint with enough flexibility to allow some of these partners to take as much or as little control as they need to, but still participate in these content marketing programs. It's all very important information. So for us, we really think of the sales funnel, and when we run into the channel space, we really try to think of, you're looking at the awareness, you're looking at engaging the audience, you're looking at that visitor experience when they get to your content, and then you're looking at the actual conversion of that. So if you can activate the partners, you can push content to them, you can control what shows up where, you can support the whole actual cycle. So you can actually look at, where they're at in the buying process. If they come onto the website and there's content there that's relevant, can they find what they're looking for? Can they fill information out to gather more information? And if you can hit them when they're in the buying process, and you can do this on a partner's website and help the partner with it, it's going to give you a real big boon here in what you see with analytics and statistics for conversions. So when you think of having control of content on a partner's website, one of the nice things about it is not only can you help make sure that the content is relevant, that it's up to date, that you can see that it's something that the end users are actually looking for, you can then actually drive traffic to this content, and you can start rolling out campaigns and things that actually drive that awareness and try to get eyeballs. Because one of the things that you'll see is even if you get a partner to put good content on his website that you're helping him with, that partner might only get 100 visits a month to his website. So the visits he does get, they're very important visits, and you want to make sure that you're optimizing those as best you can. And if you look at it, how can I help get more visits to that website? Well, there's a lot of things you can do. But if you actually have control of the content on the website and you're already pushing content to them and you're keeping those marketing campaigns up to date, you can then look at things like social media. You can look at things like PPC. You can look at things like email. And you can actually use that footprint you have on the partner's website as a vehicle to kind of push traffic to their website for them on their behalf for your products and help them really get eyeballs there on the content that you can make sure is good and relevant, and use that to generate demand. Use that to drive traffic to individual assets, campaigns, landing pages, anything that would be relevant to actually push an end user to fill out a lead capture form. You really have a lot of opportunities to help them with that with marketing automation tools. Also, one of the interesting things that we've seen quite a bit of lately is, as Carol mentioned earlier, you're always fighting for mind share and bandwidth. The VAR might be authorized to sell 50 different manufacturers that all fit into his overall solution. Everything from small pieces to networking, hardware, software, security, backup, whatever that ends up being. And there's been a huge uptick in, content marketing on the website is relevant to help generate interest and traffic. Well, how do I get control or mind share and bandwidth of the actual sales rep out of VAR? When he's sitting down at a sales appointment and he's in Texas and he's talking to a doctor's office, and that doctor's office has called him in and said, we're looking to replace our phone system. How do I make sure when that VAR is sitting there and he's authorized to sell 6 different manufacturers of phone systems, how do I make sure that he has relevant sales and marketing collateral to sell my product first and recommend my product over one of my competing products? And a lot of that goes back to that ease of use and that top-of-mind sort of idea where you're trying to make sure that you are the easiest to sell, you give the most value, and you're really trying to help them really generate demand and get interest in your product. And there's ways you can actually push content and get it right into dashboards, so sales reps can actually have assets in their hands wherever there's internet access, so they can download. They're actually logging into full portals and have to remember logins and credentials. So we're seeing a big push with a lot of companies now. They're trying to get into mobile applications, trying to get into intranet, they're trying to get into desktops where they can push content into the sales reps' hands and help them engage and convert on a higher level. So really, on us, and where we kind of think of this with the content marketing, the sort of that 5th step, if you're taking the steps to realize content is important, if you're trying to help the partners with content, you're trying to make it easy for them to have content, you're trying to help them with the lift, you're trying to drive traffic to that content, you're trying to help the sales reps sell more of your product by giving them the relevant content in the easiest way possible, what you're actually going to find is that there's the ability to analyze and optimize everything in that process through software. So you can actually see and measure return on investment. You can actually see what works, what doesn't work. You can actually say, no one goes to this particular product. No one looks at this particular asset. Why is that? There's got to be a reason for that. Why do they look at this and convert on this versus that? You're going to basically turn your partner's website from doors into windows. You're going to have some visibility when you go down this road into what they're actually doing, what the end users themselves are reacting to when they go to your content. So you're going to have the ability to really gauge from a high level, is the product information interesting? Are they willing to give up information about themselves to view this white paper or to watch this video? This sort of information, what's the highest rate of conversion? If I give them this and they watch this, will they actually convert that into a lead? Out of those leads, how many of those are my partners actually closing? So improving that process, getting visibility, and having real data to have actionable items on are all really big parts of looking at content marketing through partner demand generation and really understanding what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, what's good to spend money on, and what is a waste of time. So the analyzing of this entire process is a really big part of figuring out sort of what's the best way to do content marketing through my partners. And really, again, we can jump through this quick, but you really you want to influence the entire funnel for the partner for demand generation. So you want to be able to look at, is there driving demand, getting awareness. There's actually helping them convert sales by putting things into documents and information into the sales rep's hands, and everything in between with their content, changing your content, keeping it fresh, tracking what people watch, what they don't watch, what they download, what they read, and moving things around and being responsive to what the actual marketplace is looking for, and really trying to help the partners everywhere in that sales funnel and making sure that there's not holes there. So you can actually be adjusting things as you see fit with the benefit of the partner and ultimately you to drive revenue at the end of the day.
Yeah, Thank you, Shawn. Julianne, do you want to load the last polling question before we do our review? I won't be able to see it, so I'll let you.
Hold on a second. I am interesting. It's disappeared on my panel. Well, I'm going to have to fix that.
Okay.
Sorry. It's not showing up. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, I guess the question really was, are you seeing some of these challenges we've discussed and specific to the content and the syndication or automation of that content. So let's just wrap up here and we'll go to Q&A. The story really is avoid the build it and they will come approach. You want to first consider your audience, your resources, your software platforms, and the requirements. You want to secondly plan ahead with benchmarking and KPIs. You're gonna build them in as you go, but you've got to have them. Design with partner business plans in mind. In terms of the marketing packages you're going to offer. Consider the MDF distribution and the allocation flow. How is that going to work? Julianne spoke a little bit about that. Have a marketing campaign approval process. This is always the last thing people think about. They put these programs in place and they say, okay, what's that flow going to be like? Who's going to approve what level of MDF use and which campaign is chosen. Consider the ability to scale using concierge services, either your team or a vendor team. Tie demand generation tactics to the deal registration. And finally, line up your data and your content development. You have to consider the evolution of the program, especially if you have a portal tied to this. What you start with today will more than likely evolve over time as needs change, as the marketing tactics change. We've seen them change quickly in the past 3 years, and as online marketing evolves. Lastly, your partners will change their behaviors based on the business needs as well as the needs of their clients. So my word to you from the mouth of Meg Whitman is embrace the change. So let's go to questions.
Yeah, so we got a question here from Maggie. Hey, Maggie, it's good to see you on here. She asks, what roles do you see the channel sales managers from the OEM side play in the channel marketing initiatives?
Say that one more time.
What roles do we see the channel sales managers, so, the partner success managers, those guys, play on the OEM side for channel marketing initiatives?
Well, we've seen it, and Julianne, if you want me to take it, I can answer.
Yeah, sure, go for it.
We've seen the channel sales managers' roles vary over time. I can remember early days, and I would call them like CAMs, the channel account managers in the early days, changed from it being very, very involved and actually engaging the vendor team, say the team at eCoast, and making suggestions. And then I've also seen it where they're not involved at all, and there's a partner marketing manager that is the very hands-on person that's engaging with the vendor. And then I've seen it where neither play a role, and it's a turnkey program where the vendor seems to be the one that is watching out for the partner and recommending, how the packages are going to be used or consumed and offering the marketing consultative approach, if you will. Hope that answers.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what I've seen as well, Carol. In some cases they are actively involved. Depends on how involved they stay in making and following through on the business plans that a partner might provide to their supplier, and how accountable the partner manager is on the sales side to that. But as Carol said, it really does vary by supplier and the way that their particular channels, distribution channel support is structured. So yeah, it can be high involvement or no involvement. Yeah, that's pretty much how we've seen that.
Yeah, and we can easily talk through that if we want to take that offline. If that person wants to call us.
Yeah, so if anyone else has a question, feel free to enter it into the question box. I'd be happy to take a few minutes and answer some questions. I got a question here. You talk a lot about saving time for the partners, but it sounds like much more time for us on the channel side as vendors. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, is that a TIE question or is that an eCoast question? Because I can answer it from the eCoast, from the concierge perspective.
Yeah, why don't we do that?
Shawn,
and Ty can take his pass.
Okay. So in terms of time, and I would say from the vendor, you're talking the vendor, taking up time, the vendor's time. Sounds like more hands-on, yes, hands-on, hand-holding. Yeah, you know, it really depends on the revenue you're trying to hold, drive, and how much you want to hold their hand. Usually what the supplier does is that's part of the tiering process. They determine which partners are going to require turnkey with assistance, which partners are only going to get turnkey, and it's based on the tiering, and it all happens very early on in the process. One of the companies I've seen organizations work with suppliers quite a bit on that process is Serious Decisions, the analyst group that aligns sales and marketing. But it's all about deciding, you know, how much time and resource you want to put into which tier of partners.
Yeah,
Shawn, did you have anything to add?
On our side, really quick on that too, it depends. We've seen a lot with, it still needs to be when someone's using something like our tools, for example, it still needs to be something that we can automate as much as we can for them so that the partner's always in mind, because on our end, a lot of times the partners are the actual users of the program. So, you need to make it as simple as possible and easy as possible for partners to use these tools. But it also, you can't have a huge workflow where channel marketing people have to manage a whole lot of new stuff. So we've done things in the past. We have certain clients that we have. We take content updates out of the channel marketing department, for example. So we'll put it back into like the web team or the IT team by having things like integrations where they can have content automatically pushed from their content management systems directly into an interface like our system where we're helping push content to partners. So the marketing people aren't doing heavy lifting in the day-to-day operations. But a lot of times, too, you're not rolling out 14 campaigns a day either, and you kind of add it to your normal process and make it so it's not a huge, heavy burden to kind of help share content with partners. That's from our end.
Great, thanks for that, Shawn. Shawn, I have another question for you here. What percentage of VARs in U.S. and Canada are actively adopting / actually deploying content syndication on their sites as a vehicle pushed out to them by vendors?
That's a good question. It is varied. So, as a company, in our particular area and what we see, we've been doing this quite a while. We've done quite a bit in Europe, too. It depends heavily on the relationship of the vendor with their particular partner community. So we've seen that there's quite a bit of overlap. You'll probably find if you go to one VAR's website and they have 50 brands, you can tell very quickly who the brands are that offer, push models where they have some sort of syndication or some sort of push content. And then you can see the brands clearly that don't. I would say that in North America, there is quite a bit of adoption, but I would still say that in our instance, you might see without a concierge service, without anyone coming in and trying to, make sure and do that whole hand-holding, making that awareness, even with something that's very simple for them to engage in, could still have a 50% drop-off rate on people that start the process versus actually put things on their website. And that number can be lower. So I've seen some companies that have, and they have 4,000 VARs, for example. They might have 1,500 VARs actively participating in a program, and at any given time, that can spike if they do outreach. It can drop if they shed partners. So it's an interesting sort of mix to see. It is not It's no longer cutting-edge technology. The big vendors have started doing this probably since 08, 09. And so it's now trickling down to more of, it's not really table stakes yet either. So it's more of the early adoption stage for a vehicle for content marketing. But it is heavily used. I'd say there's probably 100 or so, 125, rather large B2B technology companies that have some sort of push model program with pushing content out to the partners' websites. Some of those partners can also be the DMRs and the retailers and the e-tailers. They make up a large percentage of companies that are used to doing it. Other companies that we have only give it to small partners, and they don't actually promote it to their bigger and larger partners. So there are gaps in coverage as well. So you might see that little tiny Web 1.0 websites from very small 10-person systems integrators are the bigger users of things like syndication. And then the larger regional VARs are less interested in sort of the cookie-cutter syndications because they have marketing departments and they have budgets and allocations, and they're a bit more particular of how they use it. So we have seen a wide range of VARs and the level of participation, I would say.
Great, thanks for that, Shawn, and thanks, Charles, for providing that question. We're really close to the top of the hour. We could probably take one more question.
Hey, Julianne, I thought I'd make a plug here while we have a moment before we take the last question. We plan on doing a webcast series, and this was very high level and a lot of information to take in, but just to let you know, we plan on having another webcast, probably more around social media tactics for channel partners, so diving deeper into specific tactics and package offerings that partners are taking advantage of today and doing so very successfully that are part of supplier programs. So just wanted to let everybody know if they have any interest in the as we send out invites for the next webcast.
Yeah, great for that, Carol. You're absolutely right. So it looks like people are starting to drop off. We'll close out now. We will be providing this webinar on demand on the eCoast website, and I'm sure TIE Kinetix will have a link as well. And we look forward to talking with you again with a little bit more detail, as Carol said, on the deeper dive for channel programs. If anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to both Carol and Shawn directly. Their information is on this slide right here. And with that, we thank you very much for your time today. Have a great afternoon.